A man, seeking a thrill, drove his newly purchased Dodge into a parking lot and started drifting wildly. However, he wasn't a professional driver, and within minutes, he managed to drive the car into a ditch. The world of the wealthy is always unpredictable. He took out the purchase contract, rolled it up, and stuffed it directly into the fuel tank, then used a lighter to set it on fire. Finally, he sat on the ground with a satisfied look on his face. In just a few minutes, Walter lost $500,000, but at this moment, he didn't care about the money. He was more concerned about when Gus would make a move against him. To ensure his own survival, Walter had to strike against Gus first. Walter asked Saul to introduce some hitmen to him, but unfortunately, the hitmen Saul knew were also known to Mike. Walter planned to do it himself but found it difficult to get close to Gus. Saul suggested he talk to Jesse, since he knew Jesse had recently met Gus. Looks like Saul and Jesse have a better relationship than he does. Jesse detailed his recent encounter with Gus to Walter. Learning that Gus planned to heavily utilize Jesse, Walter urgently reminded him, "Have you forgotten that just a month ago he wanted to kill us? And the kid they used and got killed?" Jesse understood Walter's point and impatiently said he would kill Gus if given the chance. So, Walter synthesized ricin in a camera blind spot at work. This was the poison they had previously planned to use on Tuco. Walter gave it to Jesse, who hid it in a cigarette, ready to act at any moment. Soon, the opportunity arose. Gus arranged a meeting with the Mexican businessman, and Jesse was called by Mike to help prepare coffee. It was the perfect time to do it. Just as Jesse was about to take out the hidden ricin, Mike suddenly called him from behind and handed Jesse a gun for protection, instructing him to be very cautious. It was clear that Mike now considered Jesse one of his own. Very soon, the Mexican businessmen arrived by car, and the ones who got out were the same robbers from the beginning of the previous episode, but they are just employees of the Mexican drug cartel, which obviously does not take Gus seriously. Gus proposed a one-time payment of $55 million to resolve the conflict between them, but this offer didn't meet the other party's expectations, and the negotiation ended unpleasantly, setting the stage for a future conflict. At this moment, Jesse had the perfect opportunity to kill Gus, but he hesitated. Days later, Walter seized an opportunity to ask Jesse if he had acted against Gus, and Jesse lied, saying he hadn't seen Gus. Meanwhile, Walter's actions led Hank to revisit Gail's case. Hank discovers that Gail, who has always been a vegetarian, has a wrapper from a fried chicken restaurant with a mysterious string of numbers on it. Hank asked Walter Jr., who had just learned to drive, to take him to the chicken restaurant to investigate the clues. Hank's dedication was commendable. Even using crutches didn't stop him from investigating. Gus enthusiastically served them and even refilled Hank's drink, allowing Hank to easily collect Gus's fingerprints. After days of investigation, Hank discovered some important clues and went to the DEA to report to George. Hank linked Gail's case to his pursuit of Heisenberg. The numbers on the fried chicken paper were a part number, used in a high-efficiency air filtration system. Such a small part cost over $300,000, typically used in pharmaceutical labs. Since it was found at Gail's place, it was likely used in their super lab for drug production. Hank also found out that the manufacturer of the filtration system was a large multinational company named Madrigal Electromotive. He called their customer service to inquire about the part, and found out it was received by Gail, but there was no record of who paid for it. After learning about Hank's identity, the company involved their legal team, cutting off the lead. Hank then investigated the multinational company. Their headquarters were in Germany, and they were involved in many industries, including investing in chain restaurants in the US, like Gus's chicken restaurant. All these clues led Hank to guess that Gail's financier was probably Gus, but George thought Hank's speculation was too far-fetched. Hank anticipated their concerns and produced fingerprints from Gail's crime scene, matching them with Gus's. Faced with this solid evidence, Gus was summoned to the police station for questioning the next day. A detail in this scene is worth noting. On the police station's board, there was a picture of the suspect Victor. Victor had been seen at Gail's murder scene, so Gus eliminated this potential threat. This again demonstrated Gus's cautious and ruthless approach. Facing the joint investigation by the DEA and the police, Gus hid his fear and responded to their questions with wit. Gus claimed he had provided Gail with a scholarship during his university days and hadn't seen him in a long time. Recently, Gail invited Gus over to his house with the intention of borrowing money, but Gus didn't agree. Soon after, Gail was murdered. Gus also provided an alibi for the time of the murder. Seeing no fruitful results, Hank questioned Gus about his background. Hank had done in-depth research on Gus's personal history. Gus was born in Chile and later immigrated to the US, but there were no records from before his immigration. Gus explained that it was likely due to local government negligence causing a loss of records and encouraged Hank to continue investigating. One had to admire Gus's composure in such situations. The consequences of a person's hubris can be terrifying. Walter successfully reminded Hank that the deceased Gale was not the Heisenberg he was looking for. After a thorough investigation, Hank pointed the finger at the fast food restaurant owner, Gus. But due to insufficient evidence, the always discreet Gus managed to evade suspicion. However, Hank did not give up easily and decided to continue investigating Gus. Since Hank's gunshot wound had not fully healed, he used the pretext of attending a mineral exhibit to get Walter to take him out. It wasn't until they arrived at the fried chicken restaurant that Hank revealed his true purpose. At this point, Walter was a bit flustered. He never expected Hank to track things back to Gus. Hank's words made Walter's gut turn blue.
Remember Gail Bedecker? That's the sad sack from the karaoke videotape?
Yeah.
And you said that he didn't strike you as being the boss man type, that probably there was a much bigger guy out there, right?
Hank, that was just
It
speculation.
doesn't matter. It made me keep at it. And guess what I find? Chicken Man's fingerprints at Bedecker's murder scene.
He wished he could find a place to slap himself hard. He urgently asked Hank about the results, as it was his instinctive reaction to avoid showing any connection with Gus. Walter desperately concealed his inner fear. Hank didn't just call Walter to act as his driver, he also wanted Walter to help him install a tracking device on Gus's car. At that moment, Mike parked his car next to them, putting Walter in a difficult position. Walter initially wanted to refuse with an excuse but couldn't resist Hank's persistent pleading. Reluctantly, Walter pretended to squat down. However, instead of installing the tracker, Walter went into the store to confess to Gus.
See, I didn't do it. Do it. Do it.
With Gus's permission, Walter came back out and finally installed the tracker. Hank was baffled. Does installing a tracker really require 2 attempts? He wondered. Walter got back in the car and explained he was just checking if it was securely installed. Hank's maneuver left Walter in a state of panic. He hurried to the lab's camera and explained to Gus that he did not intentionally bring Hank there to investigate. He also confessed that Hank had no concrete evidence. Walter promised that as long as Gus ensured Hank's safety, Hank wouldn't find any clues. Immediately after, Walter went to Jesse's house and questioned him about why he hadn't acted against Gus yet. At this moment, Walter desperately needed Gus dead. He coached Jesse on how to make an excuse to meet with Gus, but Jesse wasn't taking it seriously. Recently, Gus's recognition and heavy use of Jesse made him reluctant to act. This also reflected Jesse's indecisive nature. While Jesse was in the bathroom, Walter overheard Jesse's phone ringing. He quickly took it out to check and saw a message, proving Jesse had indeed met with Gus recently. Facing Jesse's lies, Walter realized he couldn't rely on him. Meanwhile, Mike was also investigating Hank. At this moment, Hank was fighting alone. Even the tracker he used was installed illegally. Mike indicated that as long as they were cautious, Hank wouldn't catch anything. Compared to dealing with Hank, the Mexican cartel was a bigger headache. If they were discovered by Hank during the conflict, it would be extremely troublesome. With a capable person like Mike, Gus was quite reassured. Gus also began to advance his plan. He removed Hank's tracker from his car and then went to the nursing home to visit Tio. On the surface, Gus was visiting Tio, but in reality, he was signaling his revenge. Reflecting on Gus's early experiences, a young and inexperienced Gus, along with his friend Max, went to negotiate business with the Cartel group. At that time, Tio was still in his prime, exuding arrogance and making the young Gus unable to look him in the eye. Although Gus and Max's product was a novelty back then, it posed a potential threat to the Cartel group. Moreover, expanding their market on the Cartel's turf was seen as a challenge to the Cartel's dominance. Gus and Max realized something was wrong and hurriedly tried to explain, but it was too late. With a gunshot, Max fell dead by the poolside. The shooter was the fierce Tio. A devastated Gus tried to fight Tio but was restrained and pinned down by the pool. From that moment, a seed of hatred was deeply planted in Gus's heart. However, it's not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. After years of operations, Gus finally secured his own position and gained enough strength to confront them. And now, Tio was paying the price for his actions in his youth. A few days later, Walter helped Hank retrieve the tracker from Gus's car. Hank returned home and investigated, finding that Gus's routine was strictly between 2 points, never deviating. which made Hank even more suspicious. When Walter was leaving, he saw that Gus's men had been spying on Hank, so he didn't say a word and called the police.
Yes, hi. I live on the 4900 block of Doswell Place, and I want to report a very suspicious man who's lurking in my neighborhood. He's sitting in a blue sedan, and he's been staring at a particular house for a very long time. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you would, I would appreciate it.
When it came to protecting his family, Walter would not hesitate. Early the next morning, Walter was woken up by a call from Hank, who claimed to have located Gus's supply base just outside the city. Upon hearing this, Walter was instantly wide awake. Hank wanted Walter to accompany him again, but Walter quickly feigned illness and refused, promising to take Hank when he felt better. Walter then contacted Mike and informed him of Hank's plan to prevent Hank from finding incriminating evidence. Upon hearing this, Mike hurriedly took Jesse to handle the situation. Meanwhile, due to Walter's massive earnings, Skylar found that a single car wash couldn't launder all the money. Skylar had no choice but to hide the extra money in sealed bags, but the amount was so large that the clothes rod couldn't support its weight. With no other choice, Skylar hid the money in the floorboards of the house. Thanks to Skylar's meticulous calculations, their car wash was soon to be profitable. Skylar shared this good news with Walter and suggested he could consider retiring, but what Skylar didn't know was that Walter could no longer make a clean getaway. The next day, while Jesse and others were moving things at Gus's farm, a colleague ahead of them was suddenly shot in the head by a sniper. Jesse was frozen in place, terrified by the horrifying scene. Unbeknownst to him, the sniper had already aimed at him. At the critical moment, Mike pulled him away, saving his life. They hid behind cover, not daring to make a move. Hearing the commotion, Gus exuded a powerful aura and boldly walked toward the sniper's direction. The sniper was the same representative sent by the Cartel group to negotiate with Gus earlier. He didn't dare to actually kill Gus because the Cartel still relied on Gus's distribution network in the US. They just wanted to exert some pressure on him. Clever as ever, Gus understood their intent, which is why he dared to make such a bold move. When a corpse was pushed in, Walter curiously asked what was going on, thinking Gus had killed another subordinate. Mike, standing nearby, told him to shut up.
I don't want you talking to me or Jesse. Just get the barrel. And if you ever plan on calling the cops on one of my guys again, you go ahead and get 2 barrels.
To resolve the conflict with the Cartel group once and for all, Gus invited Jesse to his home. Jesse would play a crucial role in this plan. Seeing a pot of soup nearby, Jesse took out the cigarette containing the ricin, but in the end, he didn't use it. Gus asked Jesse if he could leave Walter and work independently, which made Jesse think Gus was planning to kill Walter.
Why? You asking me if I can cook, Mr. White's the loser you were about to waste and dump in the desert a month ago? Then get me to keep for you after you kill Mr. White. You kill Mr. White, you're gonna have to kill me too.
That is not what I asked you. And I need your help. I need you to help prevent an all-out war. Now, if you would, answer the question.
Clearly, Jesse misunderstood Gus's intentions. The next day, Walter left work early before finishing his tasks because he needed to secretly retrieve the tracker he had placed on Jesse's car. He learned that from Hank. Jesse was supposed to be sent by Gus to the Cartel group to teach, but lacking confidence in his own skills, he planned to have Walter tutor him. Jesse explained to Walter the tension between Gus and the Cartel group, stressing that if he failed, Gus would not spare him. Jesse urged Walter to start tutoring him as soon as possible, but Walter had no response. Still fixated on why Jesse had lied to him, Walter questioned Jesse if he had seen Gus. Jesse lied, claiming he hadn't seen him. Walter forcefully took out the cigarette containing the ricin and asked Jesse, "Are you sure you weren't at Gus's house last night?" Seeing he couldn't hide it anymore, Jesse admitted he didn't find an opportunity. Walter questioned, "You mean you had no chance in over 2 hours?" Jesse then realized how Walter knew so much about his actions. Walter, no longer hiding, showed Jesse the tracker.
7:10 to 9:28 p.m. 2 hours and 18 minutes. But you had no intentions, did you? Not the slightest intention.
Everything that I have done for you.
Oh,
You put a bug on my cord?
I'm sorry. After everything you've done for me, what you've done for me, You killed me, is what you've done. You've signed my death warrant. And now you want advice? All right, I'll give you advice. Go to Mexico and screw up like I know you will, and wind up in a barrel somewhere.
They're both pissed off to the max, and Walter and Jesse are on the verge of a huge fight. It's clear that the older Walter doesn't have the upper hand at all, and at the end Jesse politely asks Walter,
Can you walk? Hey, get the out of here and never come back.